What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton, and welcome to episode 3 of the Power Company Climbing podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. We just launched our new site, which I am excited about, largely because working on something that no one can see seems a little pointless sometimes, and I am not a computer guy, and it drove me a little insane. So I'm glad that's out there in the world. Go check it out. It's got all of our training options up there. We'll have apparel up soon. I actually have it in boxes. I just haven't taken photos of it and put it on the interwebs yet. So that'll be there soon. We're always creating new content. Nate's got some blogs that he's working on that I'm excited to get up there as well. So go check that out. And you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, anywhere you are on the interwebs except for Twitter, because frankly I can't stand Twitter. I don't understand it. It drives me a little crazy and I choose not to use it. So everywhere else you are on the interwebs at Power Company Climbing, find us. So ironically, I got up early this morning thinking I was going to be extra super productive. And I got about 2 minutes of work done, and the power went out. Ironic. No power here at the power company. And I'm currently sitting here waiting for the other power company to turn the power back on. But I have battery power, so take that, establishment. You can't win this one. And hopefully my batteries don't die while I'm doing this. So we'll see. Anywho, I'm really proud of the interview that we've got today. You'll probably hear me say that again in the future because, frankly, I'm proud of everything I put out there, or I just wouldn't put it out into the world. But this one really is special. I sit down with a good friend of mine who actually does some coaching through the power company and in Estes Park this past summer. Rannveig Aamodt. She is a Norwegian climber who you've undoubtedly seen. Her husband, Nathan Welton, is a really talented, brilliant photographer, and Rannveig just happens to be gorgeous and a strong rock climber, so that makes for good photos pretty much all the time. So you've seen her. What we talk about is an experience Rannveig had in Turkey in 2012. She made a mistake at the anchors of a route and took a 50-foot ground fall. That resulted in some pretty horrific injuries, and we talk about her road to recovery. One thing we don't talk about is exactly how the accident happened, and I'm not going to try to explain it because I'm afraid I would just confuse you even more if you're confused about it. So if you really have to know, you can go out onto the interwebs, and I'm sure you can find the details of it. It's a pretty complicated mistake to make, but pretty simple for it to happen, I think. So anyway, we're not going to talk about that because I don't want to be responsible for confusing you. Several times in this interview, I reference a story that Rannveig wrote about the accident on her blog, and you'll be able to find links to that, to the image that I talk about, and anything else that I reference on the show notes page, which you can find at PowerCompanyClimbing.com. Click on the podcast link. But I want to get this started by reading an excerpt from Rannveig's story, and this is actually an excerpt from her husband Nathan's diary from that day. And this particular passage just really touched me the first time I read it and stuck with me. So after I read this, we'll just jump right into the interview. I can still see her falling in a sitting position with outstretched arms that made small clockwise circles, like a bird falling from the nest. I can still feel my intestines knotting up as the rope failed to come taut with each new meter she plunged. She made a surprised noise, the same sound she'd make when she dropped a plate or fumbled with her keys, and I can hear the nauseating thud of impact, the cracks of snapping bones and tearing flesh, the breathless, powerful echo of my voice as I screamed for help into the empty pastures below. I can still smell her blood as it poured from her head and into my hands, soaking my clothes and flowing down the limestone. I remember slipping in it, unable to steady myself as I tried to stabilize her spine. I remember the feeling of the blood drying on my skin, tugging at my hair every time I moved my arms or legs. I kissed her forehead, and the blood dried in my beard, and I was reminded of it as I cried because my face contorted and it pulled on my whiskers. An eagle circled overhead and the air was still, but I felt like all the world's chaos and violence had landed on my shoulders. Everything had suddenly become so unbearably loud. I remember the primal, metallic taste of fear. She had bones coming out of her ankles, out of her elbow, and both her feet were grotesquely twisted 90 degrees to the side. She was paralyzed from the waist down. Her hip was broken, her back was broken, her feet were broken, her teeth were broken, and she had a deep bloody gash on her head. She was shrieking into that blazing Turkish sun. "Where am I?" she cried. "What happened?" I told her to breathe in the pain, thankful that she was, at that point, still alive. I didn't know what to do with so much trauma, and I didn't know if she was bleeding to death on the inside. So I just cradled her head and held her hand and wondered silently as she screamed if this was how I was going to lose my wife. If this is how it would all end, like a scene in a movie, looking into her big blue eyes as her life slowly ebbed away and they closed for one final time.
But the training part, like the fight, that happened like I think almost immediately when I woke up in the hospital. I was like, it was, yeah. I needed to know that I did everything I could do.
Okay, so you were just saying that sometimes it's hard to remember how it felt. Like it's kind of, or to go back to that place. So let's talk a little about that.
Yeah. Yeah, like yeah, it can be hard to like remember how it actually felt. Like I don't want it to, like, if I'm gonna explain what happened, I don't want to like make it sound like like a like nicer than it was, and sometimes it's hard to
Sure.
like tap into like how it actually was and not just make it like, oh yeah, I recovered, everything is good now. And yeah, like through the whole process it could be kind of hard actually to tell people how I actually felt, because you want to say that everything is good, you want to be positive, you want to like, yeah, this is, yeah, I'm doing better. I, but like a big part of you is still like no, it sucks. It's yeah, and you're dealing with a lot of pain and dealing with a lot of like issues that can be hard sometimes.
Yeah. So,
Still.
and it was it's a hugely inspirational story to a lot of people. And it was pretty heavily publicized. And your husband, Nathan, who's an amazing photographer, took these really great photos of the rehabilitation process, and you wrote this great story, and his part of your story that he wrote really sticks into my head. I think about it pretty often, actually. So do you think it being as publicized as it was, even though it was you doing a lot of the publicizing it because it is such an inspirational story, do you think that kind of leads your memory to different places than it might have otherwise been?
I've been like really conscious about that the whole time, trying to like make it real. Like tell people how it was. And like you wanna, like in the middle of the process, uh, I wanted to stay positive. I wanted to like not into like go into these deep places sometimes. So
It's
God,
hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard. So you want to tell people that you're great. You want to like make it sound good because that's how what you want to tell yourself. That's how you want it to be.
Right.
So it's
Yeah. And
kind of
if you put
like
that out there, maybe that's what's actually
what's
going on.
actually happening. But the whole time I've been trying to not make it sound like better or easier or than it is.
Sure.
Because like talking about it has been a good way to feel that I can give something back. I've like received so much help through this whole process, and like help other. And I know how I felt, that I was like reaching out and trying to find other stories that were similar to me. There's
Yeah.
so many unknowns, and you're like really seeking for help when you're in the situation. So I feel like what I could do now is to be that for other people who's in the same situation. And I've received a lot of feedback that I'm helping many
Yeah.
people out there. And
And I'm sure there are people everywhere who are getting inspiration from it. I am for sure. I'm going through a shoulder injury right now that's incredibly minor compared to what you went through, and that definitely is a source of strength and inspiration for me. Um, what exactly were the injuries that you had? Can you even list them all?
yeah, I was quite a mess. So yeah, I took the fall. I landed with my knee with my legs bent. So
So you
I
landed on your
I
feet,
landed on
but
my feet, like almost like as if I was in a chair, sitting in a
oh,
chair.
okay.
So I kind of like saved my knees, but my ankles took like basically the whole fall. So I shattered my ankles. It was kind of like a mash of bones and um, tendons ripped off the bones and nerves. So it's kind of like a porridge of bones and tendons.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, so a lot of fractures in the ankles. The talus bones were broken, and the calcaneus, yeah, multiple. I think it was like 13 bones in there who was affected. My knees were fine. I had like 2 fractures in my pelvis, and 3 vertebrae, compression fractures in 3 of the vertebrae, L2 to L4, and then my elbow, um, the tip of my elbow broke
So
in
did you
3
fall
pieces.
back onto your elbows?
So I was like uh, falling, and like and kind of got like a little twist as I hit the ground, I think. So my whole like right side got more affected than the left. Kind of fell on my right side, I think. So my right elbow got screwed up, and yeah, but my I didn't hit my head or anything, so I was yeah, I was lucky in a way.
And were you lucid through most of this? Is all this memory, or is it, I mean, do you remember the rescue?
Yeah, for sure. I was conscious. I remember. So what I remember is, I remember like clipping out of the anchor, started falling. I thought that Nathan had like given me a little bit of slack to give me like a bonus fall from the anchor or something.
Yeah.
And then when I felt that I was accelerating, I understood that something is wrong. And then I don't remember like the the middle part of the fall, but I remember like it's like my body remember the impact of the fall. I don't really like consciously remember, but
Right.
I can kind of like remember the feeling of hitting the ground. And then I think I was probably out for like a couple of seconds or something, and then I woke up from like people slapping me in the face, and and asking me questions. And I remember, then I remember it was like in and out of a cloud almost. Part of me was like in
Sure.
this bubble of light, and knowing that this is I'm dying now. This is and this is the end. Uh, and but it was like it was no fear, nothing. It was just like light, and I was okay with it. And then, like, as people were talking to me, and I had this voice in my head telling me like, no, no, it's too early. You're not ready.
Yeah,
And
your
then I
body's
kind of
going
like,
into survival mode.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then I was like in and out of this stage, kind of where like I felt the pain and everything, and then I'm back again where I just see the situation from outside of my body almost. I see Nathan being all scared, and I'm like, oh, this is so typical Nathan. He's so scared. He's so worried. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then then back to this like crazy pain that I can't, like, I don't know if I can describe it even. It's
Sure.
like
Sure.
different than anything I've experienced.
So they rescue you, take you to, you were in Turkey, correct?
Yeah, I was in Turkey.
Take you to a Turkish hospital.
Yeah, so the
When you were, do you recall the moment where you decided, where you made the decision that you're going to get back? Did that happen in the Turkish hospital? Did that happen after you were flown out of there to back to Norway, right?
yeah, so I was in Turkey for about a week until I was stable enough to get back to Norway. They actually came from Norway with a private jet airplane picking me up and flying me back. So pretty lucky to be from Norway in this
Yeah.
situation. Do I remember if there was, one thing about this whole experience is that I really got to know how it feels like to be in the moment.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room to think about other than right now. So it was like, I think it's probably like a survival mode that happens. So I was I kind of had the feeling the whole time that I am gonna, at one point, I am gonna survive this. I am gonna go through this, whatever happens.
Right.
If
Your
I
your
lose my
spirit was
legs,
still there.
yeah, that's exactly. I felt like pretty right afterward that I knew just in myself that whatever happens, I'm gonna get out of this somehow. With legs, no legs, climbing, no climbing. I still have like, yeah.
Yeah, your spirit was there. You knew
Yeah.
that no matter what was going to happen physically, that you were going to come out of it the other side just fine.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I'm not gonna say that I was never scared. Of course, like, being active is such a big part of my life.
Sure.
And I was terrified, of course, of like losing all that.
What
But
were the doctors telling you? And I'm sure that first few weeks it was probably, there wasn't a whole lot of prognosis being given because they were still figuring things out and working through things. But when did the doctors start telling you, and what did they tell you about what your athletic future might look like?
they didn't even want to talk about it. I had so many questions. I was probably like the doctor's nightmare. I wanted to know like everything, and yeah, in the beginning, like, they were just like, just forget about climbing, forget about everything right now. You're just so lucky to be alive. So there wasn't a lot of, especially for my ankles, there wasn't a lot of prognosis because it was
Right. It was just
there's so many
jelly in
bones
there.
and jelly in there that has to come together, and hopefully it would come together enough so I would be able. They thought that I was going to be able to walk again Um, um, and then, but it was like back and forth a lot. Maybe the first, I would say 3 weeks to a month, you can have like, even if they put you back together, the bones are back in your body and you're screwed back. It's like you can have complications.
Oh
Like
yeah.
my talus bone was broken, which doesn't have a lot of blood supply. So like before things stabilize, you kind of don't really know if it's gonna
Healing up
heal
correctly,
up
or yeah.
correctly. And yeah, so you can, if you go online and read about this, you can read all these horror stories, where people have to amputate and
Yeah, sometimes that's a really bad idea.
yeah, sometimes that is really bad.
It's lucky that
Uh,
your story's out there though, because your
yeah,
story's a positive story
yeah,
in this internet sea of horror stories.
yep.
So
So
there's
maybe like after about a month, I would say I was back in Norway. Things
mhm,
started to like um yeah, started to like stabilize itself a little bit. And I knew that my back was gonna probably not be pain free, or I didn't know if it was gonna be pain free, but I knew that I didn't need to like have any surgery on my back or anything like that. And my
right.
pelvis, it was just about time for it to grow back, and try to do as much as I could to later on in the process to make it pain free with exercises. And yeah.
So there's an image. It might be my favorite image from the whole photo series that Nathan has. And I don't know if it's everyone's favorite image, but I've looked at it a bunch of times since I've been rehabbing this shoulder. And it's just an image of your arm up, above the headboard of the bed, and you're holding two weights in your hand, and I don't even think you can see your face in the image. It's just your hand sticking up over the headboard.
Yeah.
And that image speaks to me of so much resiliency and determination. So what I want to know is, did that determination just gradually happen? Was there a moment where you decided you were going to climb again and it was going to be better than it was before? Or is that something you held off on making any big goal, and you just waited to see while fighting the whole time?
Yeah, like for the climbing, I was just putting that aside actually. Honestly, I was having it as a goal and as a motivation that I wanted to get back, but I was also like ready to give it up. I was gonna but the training part, like the fight, that happened like I think almost immediately when I woke up in the hospital. I was like, it was, yeah, I needed to know that I did everything I could do to
Yeah.
make it, like this situation as to come back. I know that I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I heard like 3 years later that I could have done
If you
more. If I
right.
did more, you would have like
If you would have
recovered
just worked a
more.
little harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happened like immediately. I just knew that whatever happens, I'm gonna do the best I can, and I'm gonna have to like dig deep to find that. And like I'm sure, like when I asked for those weights, everyone was like rolling their eyes and be like, "What? She has one arm that she can move, and she's gonna lift weights."
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, I think more than anything, just a thing to like remember who I was. Remember
Yeah. That's
in the
really
like the
important.
hospital, everyone is like, yeah, oh God, you like. I just want to remember who I was, basically, yeah, and that I was gonna fight hard
Yeah.
to.
See, for me, I went straight to the couch after my shoulder injury and just ate ice cream. Maybe that's because that's who I am.
I don't believe
But
you, Chris.
so fast forward a little bit, you're back to rock climbing. What are those first moments back on a rope like, and how do you convince yourself to even do it?
Didn't need to take a lot of convincing. I knew that I wanted, as fast as I was ready to try. I wanted to try. I was really excited actually to just. I I approached it with an open mind. Either I like this, if I hate it, I'm not like, if this takes more than it gives, there is so much other stuff to life that I could do. I get interested in a lot of things, as long as I put my mind and energy into it, I can get into other stuff too. So I approached it kind of with like an open mind, and I was curious. Was I gonna be scared? How was it gonna be?
And how was it?
Yeah, how was it? At that point, it was like really hard to walk. And what I experienced, as fast as I got on the wall, like even if my ankle hurt like crazy when I started climbing again, then I got a little weight off of them. And I could use my hands. I felt that I could move, so it was almost like a release to like, I can move. I don't need to have this. Yeah, it hurt less than walking, which felt really good at that point.
Yeah.
And I also think that all the pain while I was doing is kind of like released a little bit of adrenaline.
Sure.
So it was kind of like a painkiller a natural painkiller.
Yeah. And what about your mental state? I know those first times were on top rope.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What was it like when you decided to get back on lead again?
Yeah, that whole process it's been taking a lot of work and a lot of time to get like comfortable.
That you're still working through some.
Yeah, I'm still I'm good. I would say I'm good now because I've spent so much I've been so mindful about my fear. I've been like picking apart what am I scared of? And I was, yeah, you could hear me like my death screams falling like 1 meter in the beginning. And in the beginning it was like real too, because I couldn't really take a fall. My ankles wasn't ready to handle the impact. So it's both like a fear of hurting in the beginning, because I went through so much pain that like the thought of hurting more was just like no.
Yeah, so, no kidding.
So it was like a process of like finding out what am I scared of? Is my fear legit? Should I like listen to it, or do I have, is this something like that I can work through and it's gonna be beneficial for me to not listen to this fear? So I just kind of like approached it like everything else I do in climbing that I want to get better. I was thinking like, oh, okay, accepting that I am really scared of falling, and I'm not gonna think that it's gonna go away, that I'm gonna like be fearless. But I knew that I had to like find a way to live with it, to deal with the fear instead. So I approached it like I was strength training, and like really
you systematically
worked with it, and with a intention of getting better, not get rid of it, but get better at it. And I think that helped me, all like being conscious about your fear and like facing it instead of like maybe I wouldn't even have done this, like being worked so much with my, it's natural to be scared when you're climbing.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you just said get better at it instead of get rid of it.
Yeah.
So many people just think that the people that they see climbing these hard grades and taking big falls aren't scared of falling.
Yeah.
But I'm still scared of falling,
yeah.
and I tell people that all the time, and they can't believe it. And I imagine that you, having had the accident, will likely always have some fear there, but that you broke it down into, I just want to get better at it.
Yeah, I want to
be able to manage it. That's really important.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that would like be an advantage for all climbers to because at one like level or the other, unconsciously or consciously, we have to deal with fear when we're climbing. So I think
Yeah.
I think it was a good thing for me to even if it was hard in especially in the beginning, um, to go through it. I think it was really good for my climbing, like now.
Yeah. Did you take
Um,
any like specific steps? Like were there practice falls that you were taking or
yeah, for sure. So in the beginning, I was top roping. When I was ready to lead again, I would start taking like I was always climbing overhanging routes just so I knew that I wouldn't like
save your ankles?
yeah, save
Yeah.
my ankles. And that I would yeah. Um, so yeah, and I so every session I had, one of the goals before the session would be over was to take so and so many falls. So that was what I would do in the beginning. Just start small, take like a little fall and then make them longer and longer, and set a set. Sometimes I would set a set of like, okay, I want to have like five. I want to fall 5 times at least before the session is over. Um, yeah, stuff like that, and then after like I was confident with just letting go, like looking down and letting go. I was still scared of like letting go as I was doing a move.
Right,
So I
right.
would like
When you're a little out of control.
lit out of control. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
would like just make it a little harder and a little harder. And I think it was important to me to just uh try to be more comfortable out of like push myself out of my comfort zone and like try to be conscious in that state to just be more comfortable when I was not.
Yeah.
um
When speaking of being more comfortable when you're not, we talked a little earlier over breakfast, and you were talking about something I hadn't really thought about, but it makes perfect sense. Is that Nathan, being your main climbing partner, he was sometimes more scared than you were. Um, was that the case when you're taking these practice falls?
Oh
And
yeah, for sure. For like for a long time in the beginning, it was both like good and bad. It was always good to have someone who kind of like knew what I went through, so you don't need
yeah,
to like explain all the time. It's kind of good to just have someone there who knows. But at the same time, he been through such a like uh trauma, and he was dealing with like post-traumatic stress for a long time. I think the whole process was like way more mental, like with fear. He experienced a lot more fear through the whole process than I did, I think.
sure.
And so
Yeah, your body was just
my body
doing
was
what it had to do.
dealing, yeah,
Yeah, and Nathan had to watch it all happen.
watch it all and
And I'm sure the
smell.
photos were a good way for him to deal with it.
Yeah, I think so
It's not
too.
only a documentary process, but
Oh no, for sure. I was kind of like I wanted him to document the whole thing. It would be because I knew like that I wasn't in a state. I wanted to remember it afterward. So I was
sure.
yeah. Um yeah, so for him I think it was hard for him to let go. He saw me almost die. He didn't want to like see me hurt again, so he'd be like a little more protective than normal.
Sure.
And that was good in the first state, but at a certain point you kind of like have to get out there, have to try, have to get over your head, and and you just have to be scared. So I think climbing with other people who would see me without uh having the experience that Nathan had with me falling was better. They would see me as like I was ready at that point. I was ready to take fall. I was just scared, and then it would be good to have someone else to push me. So I think yeah, changing up.
Someone else other than Nathan?
Yeah, someone else
Yeah.
other than Nathan who didn't have all the experience of me almost dying if I fell.
Right.
Um, uh,
God, I can't even imagine what that would be like trying to belay you again and watch you in that same situation at the anchors of a climb.
Oh yeah,
Um,
oh God, that must have been like horrible. He thought that I was gonna die in his arms right there, and And yeah, it's just like the whole process he's been through. I've been thinking many times that wow, I didn't want to trade position with him.
Yeah.
um yeah,
So,
so yeah, changing after when I was ready to like take falls again, I think it was good to change up partners, climb with other people. And yeah, and the same for Nathan. He had a lot of stress actually, and fear of falling too when he got back
yeah, I bet.
into climbing. And like now, like 3 years later, uh, we've been working through this together, and now we push each other again, and we're really like do our safety checks, and
Yeah,
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 make sure that we
of
can leave the
course.
stress on the ground. We're like really particular about checking everything, checking our knots and everything, so we don't need to think about that mid route, you know.
Yeah, and it took you, it's, you're 3 years out at this point, still working through some of the, the residual issues. And I often see people come into the gym or something with this, oh, I'm going to get over my fear of falling today. And I think that's a big mistake that people make, to think that it's something that's just going to go away, like we talked about earlier. Um, so let's go over your process again. Let's just look at it a little more in detail. When you first started leading again, were you purposely going bolt to bolt and then just taking, or did you jump right into trying to on-site things and climb into the unknown? Because I know the unknown is a bigger fear than falling for a lot of people.
Yeah, so for me, I would be really I don't think pushing yourself too far is good, because it just creates fear. You want to just take a little step and a little step and a little step and try to be comfortable in that position before you like kind of go further. So what I would do is um I would go in. I wouldn't climb any route that I wanted my partner to have climbed the route first, and kind of like I wanted to not have too many unknowns as I was going into a climb in the beginning.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel safe, and I think like the first part of getting into climbing again was to try to feel safe. Before you feel unsafe. So I would be like climbing these overhanging routes, telling myself um, yeah, that I would just fall into air if I fell. I would never climb with someone I haven't climbed before. I needed to have a partner that I knew would give me if I fell, would give me a soft catch.
Right. Take
Um,
away as many variables as
yeah,
possible.
exactly.
Yeah.
That was the first step. And then the more I get the more comfortable I got, the more uh, um, um, yeah, I would take small falls in the beginning and see how my ankles would handle it, you know. And the more I just felt comfortable that my body could handle taking a fall, then I would get into like the next step and saying, okay, I'm ready um to climb something hard enough that I actually might fall. So I would like take it in like baby steps, feeling out where I was comfortable, um, and trying to, when I was ready, trying to like go past that a little bit in steps. um,
Was there? I find that it's easier for a lot of people to take uh, unplanned falls on terrain that they already know. So you've done the moves, um, and then you fall trying to link moves. I find that that's easier for people than like trying an on-site and falling in unknown territory. Was it? Do you think that it was easier for you to have Nathan or somebody go up, learn the moves, you go up and learn the moves bolt to bolt, or taking small falls in between that are planned? Do you think it was easier for you to take planned falls or unplanned falls on terrain that you already knew because you were you knew you were physically capable?
Yeah, of course, because it's like it takes away one of the unknown. If you know the route, you take that part out of it. And then like as you know the moves, you get more and more into like just doing the move instead of thinking about falling. So the better you know the route, the more you can concentrate about the moves instead of falling. And if you just fall, you just fall. Like for me, it would be the fear would lie in like um, losing control, falling out of control,
Yeah.
as you
Yep.
mentioned earlier. So knowing the route would definitely take um, would take one unknown out of that. So like what I would do in the beginning is usually have my partner climb it first. I would top rope the route first, and then I would get into leading it when I was feeling comfortable.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, even people aren't coming back from injury can take a lot away from that because like I said, people just try to get over this thing in a day
Yeah.
and it doesn't work that way. Sometimes it could take months or years or but as long as you're taking it in baby steps, little bite-sized chunks and just working through those little pieces at a time.
Yeah, and I think for me, like a big part of dealing with it is just to accept that you are scared. Like saying like it's okay that I'm scared, not something that I just want to hide and or get rid of or not approach. It's just like I am scared. I want to. It's okay. Like
Yeah,
I
acknowledge
want
it.
to acknowledge this and I want to do something about it.
Yeah, you can't really face it until you've acknowledged it to begin with,
Yeah,
and
right.
making excuses isn't going to help you get there.
No, so yeah, it was a good opportunity for me actually to do something about it and to learn a lot about being scared and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So what's it look like now? I know you're still dealing with some of it. Um, are there things that have fallen away that you don't have to deal with as much, or do you kind of still go through the same process?
Like for now, it is mostly it's better than it was. I would say before the accident, almost because I've been working with my working with it so much. So at most days, it's I'm at a better spot now than I was before the accident, but I still have like flashbacks, and I still sometimes it could be like um, situations that put me back into it. Like for a while, it was wind, and if I got cold,
Mm,
that would just trigger it, and I would have like I would freak out, top rope or not top rope or and I would be like, oh my God, like, like I thought I was over this. What is happening? You kind of like lose control. I would like lose control of my own body more than uh, or I will, because it still happens to me more than I've done before. Before the accident, I don't think fear would paralyze me. Now it kind of does. Now I'm like, I'm not functioning really. That happens less and less too. Just because I was like trying to find out what kind of situations that triggers my fear. And as I said, it's wind and it's and temperature.
hmm.
So and then I was thinking, well, I'm just gonna try to be cold when I'm not in a climbing situation. So I would like be outside being cold, not
Yeah.
climbing,
Yeah.
and just like kind of like re-teach your body that you're not gonna die even if you get cold. You're
Yeah.
not gonna die if it's windy. So I just like approach that, um, just trying to expose myself in safe situation to the element that would trigger it, and I feel that it's like better now. I was in the Red River Gorge last fall, and I was climbing with icy cold fingers and
Yeah. Yeah. I remember.
and when we had like fire pits under the in the cave in there. So yeah, it's definitely getting better, and I have the situations where I'm like freezing up doesn't happen that often anymore. And if it ever happens, I'm like, well, it's okay. Like you can't
Yeah.
like
Yeah. You can't beat yourself up
no,
over
you
things you
can't
can't
like
control.
it's sometimes you're like, oh, I put so much work into this. I want it to be over, but then you I just have to remember. No,
Yeah, I
it's
think you've got a
okay.
really smart way of dealing with it, whether it's something you intellectualized or not. I think
Yeah.
it's you're dealing with it in a really intelligent way by going straight to the fear and stripping away all the variables and making sure you're in a safe position when you're dealing with that fear.
Mm.
I think I can't imagine there's a better way to begin approaching any kind of fear of falling or fear of the unknown or fear of whatever. Any kind of danger that you're in, it's best to put yourself into a safe place and then deal with it slowly.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, it's been working for me. That's for sure.
So
Mm.
physically, um, are there any residuals now? I mean, you had some pretty intense injuries. Um, do your ankles limit you, or are you finding creative ways around your limitations?
Now I just have a good excuse for not carrying any hard,
You just
heavy
make Nathan
backpacks.
carry everything.
Yeah. Now I'm using it for all it's worth.
that's
No.
that's what a good that's what a good husband does anyway.
Yep.
So
um, yeah, I have pretty like severe arthritis in a lot of the joints in the ankles, so I can't really actually carry very heavy backpacks for a long time.
hmm
So I try to avoid the things that trigger is to get and that trigger it to get worse. Like if not go for long runs or carrying heavy stuff and stuff like that, and go on bike rides instead of running. Um, I still have to like change up what I would like most prefer. I would mostly prefer to go for a run if I could. I used to love that, but
yeah,
I would try to like change those things without thinking too much about it. And I still like the interesting part is that after 3 years, I still feel that it's not. It's I'm still recovering. I'm
right. You can
still getting
still
better.
get physically better.
Yeah, I still feel like that I get better. It's kind of like the it's so the curve is not steep anymore, so it's kind of like hard to notice. But when I came back to places that I was back at like 3 months ago, I kind of remember how I felt. And if I go back there, I'm like, hey, I'm so much better now.
Yeah,
So I still get better, and I think working with my leg, I lost a lot of leg muscles, and I feel like the stronger my legs get now, the more pressure or the more force the muscles can take off the joints.
right, right.
So the more my muscles come back, the um,
It's like putting armor around
yeah,
the
it
injuries that
is.
can help it.
Yeah, and in the beginning, I was like really. I wanted my climbing strength back, so I think I was focusing a lot more on my upper body strength and
Absolutely.
yeah. Um, and of course I was doing some like more exercises, but now I'm actually getting back. I can go on like short runs and I go on bike rides, and I feel that helps a lot, especially biking. Being on a road bike is one of the few things where I don't feel like limited at all.
Oh, yeah, that's really important to have.
Yeah, it's like a place where I can just go as fast as I can and like feel kind of like normal again.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that this isn't just happening. I mean, you're putting work in. I got up at 8 o'clock this morning or something and came downstairs, and you're down here working out already.
Yeah.
So you're definitely putting in the time and the effort to continue making yourself better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I love that. That's one of the things that makes me feel good. When I feel that I put a lot of effort and work into something that I want, I feel good about myself. Makes me
Yeah.
happy. And recovery, all the exercises is I've been on the other side. I know how bad it can be. Like if I can avoid that by doing like some exercises for my shoulders now and stuff like that to avoid injury, it's so much less, like it's so much easier to do that and than to be injured. So
Yeah.
for me to put in some hours in the morning to do exercises it's kind of easy.
Now, what about, did you do yoga before the injury?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yoga has been a big part of my recovery, and also, but I was doing yoga beforehand. Yeah, I just became a yoga instructor when the accident happened, so I never got to teach yoga, but I've always, not always, since I was 15 maybe, doing yoga myself.
Yeah, and
um
you told me yesterday that when you were recovering, you started out by doing chair yoga, and I think it's great that your ego allows you to step down to what a lot of people might consider a lower level. You know, not just in climbing, but in doing yoga. And in your case, it was, walking, for that matter,
yeah.
and working your way through it. Is yoga something that you feel is instrumental in the physical and the mental and the psychological aspect of coming back to climbing?
The best it's done for me is actually that it's a really good measurement. I can, like, if I try to do a yoga exercise, it shows me where I'm uneven. If I do one thing on one side, and it's so obvious if I can't do it on the other side.
Right.
I see where I need to get more flexible to be balanced. So it's a good tool to just, yeah, see if I'm balanced. And I also used it as a in the mental part where I was really scared. A lot of the chest opening exercises and the breathing was really good for me to use as a tool when I was dealing with a lot of fear.
Yeah, I bet. Do you ever, if you're at a rest on a route, does your mind ever slip into thinking about the accident, or thinking about the injuries or the physical limitations, or fear for that matter?
No, not if I start getting like scared, if I like, or if I feel my heart beats, if I'm scared of a crux that is coming up or something, that's like, I try to at least like concentrate about my breath instead. And I think yoga, like learning all this like different breathing exercises, has been a good, it's really transferable to climbing. So I try to like focus inward instead of like thinking about what's coming up,
Yeah. So you're using
yeah.
the things you practice in yoga, you're
Yeah,
practicing those while you're climbing,
yeah, I am.
calming yourself
Yeah, for
down.
sure. So that's yeah, I think yoga is really helpful that way.
Well, I'm certainly ridiculously impressed, watching you climb in the red last season, and watching you, or a year ago or so, and then watching you boulder yesterday. I'm really impressed with the way you move so easily, in such a short time after the many injuries that you sustained. But I think what I'm most impressed by is watching how, a boulder problem yesterday you were having a hard time with, and you'd found your own way because you couldn't do it the way all the tall guys were doing it, and you were getting frustrated over not being able to make this move as easy as you wanted it to be, but you kept trying it and kept trying it and kept trying it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me, through your whole experience, is that you just keep at it.
It's one of the things that like is the best thing that happened from this accident, I think, is that it just kind of like took the whole like ego and expectation and like everything that is not important, is just kind of like takes it away in a way. You like, what time I don't have time for like being worried about what other people think, or like I don't know. It's just, it kind of was a release in a little bit. Not that I was too bothered about it before the accident, but it put it in a light. Like, dude, we're just rock climbing. we're
Yeah.
yeah. Um Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for
Thank you.
sitting down with me and being nice enough to let me bother you and force you to talk about these things.
Thanks, Chris.
Wow. I don't listen back to these things until I'm putting them out into the world for you. And when I listened back to this conversation with Rannveig today, I was really struck by how powerful the story is, and how amazing a job she does at putting into words the mental process that she goes through to deal with all these fears from an obviously horrific accident. And I really think a lot of people could learn from her story and her process. So if you have somebody in your climbing life who suffers from, fear of falling, of failure, of fear of success, fear of the unknown, whatever it might be, send them this way. I really think they could learn something from this conversation. So, big things happening here. If you haven't checked out the new site, go do that, powercompanyclimbing.com. Also, find us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, everywhere but Twitter, because we hate Twitter. And just to let you know some things that are going on before I sign off here, I recently had a conversation with my friend Paul Corsaro. He is the co-author of our Kettlebells for Climbers program that I'll be putting out soon. And I'll also be putting that podcast out when we finalize the Kettlebells for Climbers ebook. Tomorrow, I'm going up to Columbus, Ohio to help out with a clinic with Justin Shong. He was nice enough to invite Nate and I to, I don't know if you just heard that, but that was my absolutely insane cat. Anyway, Justin was nice enough to invite Nate and I up to help out with the clinic, and we really feel like we could learn a lot from him, so we're both excited about that. And if you happen to be in the Midwest, I'll be emceeing the So Ill Showdown next weekend, so maybe I will see you out there. Subscribe on iTunes. You can find us on Stitcher Radio. All the other podcasters say to leave a review, but I don't really know what that means or care at this point. So if you want to, do. If you don't, don't. This time